Every morning for 22 years, Raymond Hollis kept 2 baby socks in his shirt pocket. Not because he was sentimental by nature. He was a quiet man, an electrician from Baton Rouge who measured his words and his wire lengths with equal care. He kept the socks because they were the only thing he had left. His daughter had been born at 3:17 in the morning on a November Thursday, placed in his arms for 40 seconds by a nurse who then said the NICU team needed her back, and that was the last time he had held her. The court ruling came 11 days later. The adoption had been arranged without his knowledge. By the time his attorney filed the emergency petition, his daughter was already in another state with another name. What the court did not tell him, what nobody told him, what the adoption agency had buried in a file marked closed, was that there had not been one child. There had been 2. On the day Raymond Hollis walked onto the Family Feud stage in Atlanta, Georgia, and Steve Harvey said, "They're both standing right here," Raymond's legs did not give out. His face simply stopped working. It was a Wednesday in September, and the studio smelled like coffee and stage spray, and the specific brand of anticipation that fills a room when 300 people have been waiting since 7 in the morning to watch something good happen. Raymond had come with his sister Cynthia's family. Cynthia, her husband Jerome, their 2 adult kids, and Raymond, who was always the quiet one at the edge of the family photograph. He was 51 years old. He had never remarried. He worked 60 hours a week and coached youth basketball on Saturdays, and went home to an apartment where the second bedroom had been a storage room for 22 years because he had never quite been able to make it into anything else. Cynthia had entered them on the show. She had filled out the application herself, written the family essay herself, and told Raymond about it 3 weeks before the taping with the specific confidence of a woman who knows her brother needs something and has stopped waiting for him to ask. Raymond had agreed because Cynthia had a way of asking that was really just telling, and because some part of him, the part that still carried 2 baby socks in his shirt pocket every morning, had not entirely given up on the idea that the world could still surprise him. And that wasn't even the part that made Steve Harvey cry. The story of how Raymond lost his daughter began in 1999, when he was 29, working nights at a construction site, and dating a woman named Patricia for 4 months before she told him she was pregnant. He had been happy. He had bought a crib the same week. He had started a savings account. Patricia had left for her mother's house in another state at 30 weeks. Saying she needed family around her. Raymond had called every day. He had planned to drive up for the birth. And then she had stopped answering. The baby, or what he believed was one baby, had been born in a private facility. Patricia had signed papers he never saw. The adoption had been brokered through an agency that specialized in what the industry called difficult placements, a phrase that meant, in this case, that the biological father was not part of the conversation. Raymond had hired 3 attorneys over 8 years. The first 2 told him his rights had lapsed. The third found the adoption records sealed under a state statute he had never heard of. He had written letters to the agency, to the State Oversight Board, to his congresswoman's office, and received in return a series of form responses that told him there was nothing more to be done. He had named her in his mind Eleanor, after his grandmother. He had bought Eleanor a birthday card every year on November 13th, and written in it and kept it in a shoebox in his closet. 22 cards. 22 birthdays he had not been at. What Raymond Hollis did not know, what no one had ever told him, was that Patricia had delivered twins. The agency had separated the girls at placement. One had been adopted by a family in Tennessee. The other had gone to a family in Mississippi. The records had been sealed individually, and neither adoption had referenced the existence of the other child. The twins had grown up 40 minutes apart, had never met, and had spent their adult lives carrying the specific kind of unease that people who don't know what's missing tend to carry. The Tennessee sister was named Claire. The Mississippi sister was named Maya. Both were 22 years old. Both had, independently and without knowing of the other, submitted DNA to an ancestry service in the same calendar year. The match had come back as a sibling pair. They had found each other in November. They had spent 8 months in contact, sharing stories, and discovering that they had the same laugh, the same habit of pulling at their left ear when they were thinking, and the same gap in their family trees where a biological father should have been. Maya had submitted a separate DNA sample looking for the father. The database had returned a match. Raymond Jerome Hollis, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The producers of Family Feud had been working with the twins for 6 weeks. The plan had been set, rehearsed, and kept from Raymond entirely. His sister Cynthia knew. She had known for 3 weeks and had not said a single word. But the real story hadn't even started yet. When Steve Harvey turned to Raymond during a break between rounds, not a game moment, not a scripted moment. Just Steve walking over to the Hollis family with his mic down and his face doing something that didn't belong on a game show. Raymond saw it immediately. The thing in Steve's eyes that was not the broadcast look. "Raymond," Steve said, "I need you to stay right where you are." A stage manager appeared at the door at the back of the studio. Then, another. Then, the door opened. 2 young women walked in. They were identical in the way that twins are, not in the exact architecture of their features, but in the quality of movement, the particular rhythm of how they crossed a room. They walked side by side, and they were both looking at him. And Raymond Hollis did not understand what he was seeing for exactly 4 seconds. Then he understood. His face stopped working. His hands dropped to his sides. The 2 baby socks were in his shirt pocket. "Raymond," Steve Harvey said, and his voice was not a television voice at all. "They're both standing right here." The studio fell completely silent. 300 people held the same breath. Claire and Maya crossed the stage in a way that suggested they had both been trying not to run. Raymond did not move toward them. He could not. He stood at the podium and his shoulders dropped and his mouth moved and no sound came out. Claire reached him first and put her arms around him, and he made a sound that grown men make only when something they have carried for a very long time is finally set down. Maya's hand was on his back a second later. The 3 of them stood at the center of the Family Feud stage, and the audience, 300 people who had come to watch a game show, were not watching a game show anymore. Steve Harvey walked 4 paces away and stood with his back to the cameras. His shoulders moved. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. A producer to the left of the stage had her hand pressed to her mouth. 2 camera operators had stopped adjusting their equipment. The floor was completely still. Steve turned back. He was not composed. He had chosen not to be. "Stop everything," he said. "We're going to stop the game for a minute." He walked to the edge of the stage and sat down, on the floor of the Family Feud set, not caring about his suit. And he looked at Raymond Hollis and his daughters and he said, "I want to tell you something, Raymond." He talked about his own father. About growing up without him present in the way a father should be present. About the specific kind of grief that doesn't have a funeral. The grief for a relationship that existed but was never given room. He said, "I know what it is to look for somebody your whole life. And I know what it is to wonder if you'll ever stop looking." He looked directly at Raymond. "Because 20 years ago, I was sitting in a car that was everything I owned, and I wrote a letter to my kids that I was afraid to mail. And the thing that stopped me from mailing it was the thought that somewhere out there, they were going to need their father. I held on to that." He paused. You held on for 22 years, Raymond. You held on. He wasn't finished. Steve Harvey pulled out his phone and called his attorney on the Family Feud stage. He asked about the legal steps to obtain Raymond's original parental rights documentation. He called a family law specialist in Louisiana. He committed, on air, to covering all legal fees for Raymond to have his biological parentage formally recognized in court. A process that would take 14 months and end with a judge in Baton Rouge signing an order that meant Raymond Jerome Hollis was, in the eyes of the law, a father of two. He announced both families would receive the full day's prize money. The opposing family, the Washingtons from Mobile, stood at their podium and applauded with an honesty that had nothing to do with performance. The episode aired 8 weeks later. The clip of Raymond Hollis seeing his daughters for the first time reached 310 million views in the first 14 days. It became the most shared Family Feud clip in the show's 45-year history. The hashtag #TheyAreBothHere was used in 16 languages. 3 months after the taping, Raymond Hollis drove to Nashville to meet Claire at her apartment. They ate dinner with Claire's adoptive family, who had raised her with love and had cried when she told them about finding her biological father. 6 weeks later, Raymond drove to Meridian, Mississippi, and met Maya's family. A year after the taping, Raymond Hollis stood in a Baton Rouge courtroom and was legally recognized as the father of Claire Renee Hollis and Maya Jo Hollis. Claire had taken his last name. Maya was considering it. Both were regular visitors to Baton Rouge. The second bedroom in Raymond's apartment, which had been a storage room for 22 years, had been cleared out, painted, and furnished with 2 beds. The shoebox of birthday cards, 22 cards, 1 for each year, was given to the twins. Claire read hers in 1 sitting. Maya took 3 days. Both kept every card. Today, Raymond Hollis still coaches youth basketball on Saturdays. He still works 60 hours a week. He does not carry the 2 baby socks in his shirt pocket anymore. He gave 1 to Claire and 1 to Maya the Christmas after the taping. They both wore them as bracelets to the Hollis family's first Thanksgiving together. Steve Harvey, in a radio interview 8 months after the episode aired, was asked what the most emotional moment of his career had been. He said it without hesitating. A man named Raymond, standing at my podium, understanding that 22 years of waiting wasn't wasted. That changed me. If this incredible story of a father and his daughters touched your heart, subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. Share this with someone who believes it is never too late to find your family or your way home. Have you ever been reunited with someone you thought was gone? Share your story in the comments. Because as Raymond, Claire, and Maya proved, love does not have an expiration date.